Good afternoon to everybody. I hope we will have a fruitful conference. My name is Oana Luca. I am professor at the Technical University of Civil Engineering in Bucharest, and I will present today the research performed together with my colleagues, Boteanu, postdoctoral researcher at the Valahia University of Târgoviște, Emanuel Răuță, doctoral candidate at the University of Political Studies and Public Administration in Bucharest, and Florian Gaman, associate professor at the Technical University of Civil Engineering, who also coordinated the research work. The presentation is referring to the sustainable development of rural settlements and the role of EU funds in managing territorial disparities, and is seen as an overview of the situation in rural settlements in Romania, together with potential measures for the future sustainable development. The main dysfunctions we analyzed in the team, in this interdisciplinary team, are related to employment, social exclusion and risk of poverty, education, health and infrastructure. We see infrastructure as in relation with the communal roads and main utilities, namely water supply, public sewage and thermal energy. The team considered that solving the dysfunctions related to these topics in rural settlements with the support of EU funds would lead to improvement of the quality of life. During the research, we studied the scientific literature in the field. We consulted statistical databases from Romania and European Union, and also the sketches for the next operational programs in Romania. Just a moment, because I have to move. Oh, okay. The importance of rural areas is given by at least two factors. They are inhabited by 45% of the population in Romania, and they are occupying about 90% of the country area. However, there are still pronounced gaps between the rural and urban settlements in terms of physical availability of infrastructure and basic services. In terms of employment, as you may see in the first figure, in the first row, between 2009 and 2010, the number of employees was similar in urban and rural areas. However, this number has decreased systematically in rural settlements by the end of 2018. And the rural population became increasingly affected by the unemployment. For the risk of poverty and social exclusion, in 2018, the risk was 45%, almost double than at EU level. And most of the marginalized communities in Romania include young families with children, with low incomes. They predominantly obtain these incomes from agriculture. There are informal workers and social assistance beneficiaries. In some communities of this type, access to drinking water is poor, sanitation services are lacking, and the potential for natural hazards is very high. In terms of education, as you may see in the last figure on the first row, we put together for comparison the number of students in rural and urban areas with the education infrastructure. It is visible that even the number of students followed the decreasing trend. The decrease did not exceed 15% in relation to the population in 1996. However, the declining number of educational units was much more, let's say, impetuous. In addition, the students in marginalized rural areas in Romania, who are coming mainly from low-income families, attend poorly equipped schools. Therefore, the need for investment is the highest in the country. As the new virus situation has turned the online activities, which are sporadic, let's say sporadic, into daily necessities, many of the students living in rural settlements have been practically disconnected from the chance of a normal life, especially in terms of education. Their access through the internet from their homes is influenced not only by the degree of possession of the necessary computers, but also by the technical possibilities offered by the main internet providers. All these are causing additional disparities between urban and rural settlements in Romania. In terms of health, the number of medical units has experienced an extremely negative trend, as you may see in first figure on the second row. For infrastructure, the statistics emphasize the trend of increasing the percentage of modernized communal roads from about 5% in 2010 to 17% in 2018. However, it has to be considered that more than 60% of the communal roads in Romania are still earth or gravel surface. But in the recent years, there are some programs, rural development program, for instance, financed more than 500 projects with a total of approximately 3,500 kilometers of modernized or built roads, even though road infrastructure in rural settlements still remains poorly developed and of inadequate quality. In terms of main utilities, such as water supply, sewerage, thermal energy, and natural gas network in the last figure, in rural areas, most of the existing physical infrastructure is in great need of repair or reconstruction. Particularly, the level of quality and reliability of water supply and sewerage services is generally low in rural settlements. Water quality does not always meet the minimum quality standards. Following this overview, our team established, let's say, a scenario which summarizes the relationships between the main actors, the scenes, including the eligible activities, and the potential available funds taken into account for reducing the dysfunctions in rural areas in terms of the topics we discussed before. It appears that all the eligible activities have to be included in the local development strategies of the rural settlements, and ideally, this should include also the strategies of the marginalized area, currently financed through the CLLD mechanism. Following this, it must be ensured that the national programs are complementary with European funding in order to achieve the estimated impact in rural areas. The main actors who may be involved in the scenario are the local authorities, the local action groups, consultants associations, community leaders, and the banks. As potential eligible activities which may contribute to reducing the disparities between rural and urban areas in Romania, we may consider that for employment and social exclusion, the main action may be to support businesses in non-agricultural economic fields, to improve the entrepreneurial knowledge of the rural inhabitants, vocational education and training in agricultural fields. For education, we may think about the extension and financial support of the program School After School at the national level, the teacher training programs for rural schools, digitization of schools in order to make education more attractive both for students and teachers, and also adequate school infrastructure for children. For health, we may propose to ensure the minimum infrastructure for health services and also extra training for physicians working in rural settlements. And for roads, infrastructure and utilities, it is important to modernize the transport infrastructure to increase the accessibility of rural settlements to the national transport infrastructure and also to improve the infrastructure state in the rural localities. Also, a database of best practices and lessons learned would be helpful. The funds we emphasized are the future national, European and international programs which can be accessed as operational programs, the National Program in Local Development, international financing instruments, institution funds, and so on. In conclusion, The scenario I presented above may be considered as a model which can be used by the local administration in any rural settlement. Of course, it can be developed, it can be completed further with other topics. The premise for the correct development of the rural space is based on the involvement of different stakeholders in the financing programming, based on the real needs and the expected impact, as well in the structuring of the complementary interventions. Moreover, in the context of the next programming period, which will be conditioned by reaching the targets of the impact indicators, we consider that the role of stakeholders in elaboration of future operational programs is crucial. Thank you very much for listening.